appointed as the new chief minister. A large number of the members of the cabinet have been re-inducted into the cabinet. One critical change that has happened is the alliance between the BJP and the JJP, which is Dushyant Chautala's party, that has snapped. Now, apparently, there is a lot of speculation doing the rounds, but apparently the reason why it snapped was because the JJP was insistent that they be given at least 2 Lok Sabha seats to fight in the upcoming election. That was not to be, and that's how this alliance snapped. But the bigger question is this something that will be advantage BJP? Because remember, last time around, the BJP swept all 10 seats, all 10 Lok Sabha seats in Haryana. Will it be in a position to do that again, this time in a divided house where it's the BJP versus the Congress versus the JJP in effectively what could be a 3-cornered contest? But all of that and more in just a moment. But first, the story of what a dramatic turn of events it's been today in Haryana.
नायब सिंह ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं।
लोकसभा में कोई संकट नहीं है। 10 की 10 सीटें भारतीय जनता पार्टी जीतेगी, क्योंकि सभी इंडिपेंडेंट साथी वैसे ही खड़े हैं, सभी साथी मुख्यमंत्री जी के साथ।
More than unholy, I mean unholy of course, because and the kind of things which were said about the BJP by JJP at that time. But the second part is that it was an alliance of convenience.
All right, so what is behind the churn in Haryana? The current scenario, this is how the Haryana Assembly looks like right now. The BJP seems to be in a relatively comfortable position despite, of course, the breakup with the JJP. The floor test will now take place tomorrow. The BJP on its own has 41 MLAs. 6 independents are backing the BJP. There's also Gopal Kanda of the HLP party, the Haryana Lokhit party. So that takes the tally effectively to 48. So in a 90-member house, 48. 45, remember, is the halfway mark. So the ruling combination, as it were, has 3 more than the halfway mark. Now, on the other side, you have the Congress, which is sitting at 30, the JJP, which is at 10, of which, again, the BJP claims that at least 4 JJP MLAs are in touch with them. Will there be a vertical split in the JJP? We'll have to wait and see. The INLD has 1 and there is 1 independent. So that only adds up to 42. So clearly the numbers as they stand today are in favor of the BJP, and it's unlikely to change, not least because you have Lok Sabha elections in a couple of months and you have the Vidhan Sabha elections in less than 6 months in the state of Haryana. So will there be too much dramatic change and horse trading in this picture? I suspect not. But what is interesting is, I want to go back all the way to the 2019 Vidhan Sabha results. Remember, the Lok Sabha of 2019, which happened in April-May, the BJP swept. So it was a sea of saffron. All 10 seats, all 10 Lok Sabha seats were won by the BJP. But the Vidhan Sabha election, which happened 6 months later, this is what the returns were. The BJP was down 7 from the last time. They came down to 40. The Congress had 31. The JJP had 10, the others 8, in INLD 1, Aam Aadmi Party 0. So out of these others, 6 independents have backed the BJP, and that's how this government came to pass. But I want you to focus on the pink areas, which is the JJP strongholds, and the blue areas. This is the pink areas are, of course, around the Hisar, Jind, that belt. And then the blue areas are around Rohtak, Sonipat, Panipat, that belt. So the reason why I'm highlighting these 2 areas is because this is the Jat heartland, as it were. If the Congress, once again, as it is expected, to project the Hudas as their sort of chief ministerial face, if it were, and if there is some kind of sympathy, if at all there is, for Dushyant Chautala and the JJP, then will the Jats once again consolidate around the Congress or around the JJP like they did last time around, which is why the BJP's numbers were vastly reduced. But on the contrary, the non-Jat population is much higher. The Jat population in Haryana is just about 15-16%, whereas the non-Jat population is much more than that. So will the non-Jat population, which for the last two elections, 2014 and 2019, has backed the BJP, will they continue to consolidate around the BJP? Remember, Mr. Khattar was not a Jat chief minister. He was the first non-Jat chief minister of Haryana. Mr. Saini, who's now replaced him, is also an OBC. He's not a Jat. So, one non-Jat chief minister being replaced by another non-Jat, will that send a signal to the BJP's core voters, which is now effectively in a state like Haryana, the other OBC voters? Will they consolidate around the BJP? That again will be at play for the Vidhan Sabha election. Maybe not so much for the Lok Sabha election, because of course Prime Minister Modi's image, his work and the kind of impact he has had, the vote that he gets on his own will of course be far different from the situation as far as the assembly is concerned. But in the assembly, will these caste dynamics, how will they shape the future Haryana assembly post the 2024 Vidhan Sabha election? That is something to watch out for. But for now, let's talk about what exactly happened in this partnership of the last 4 years. Why did it snap between the BJP and the JJP? Siddharth Yadav, a spokesperson of the BJP, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, the spokesperson of the Congress Party, Hemant Attri, senior journalist joining us, and Professor Sanjay Kumar is co-director with Lokniti and CSDS. Siddharth Yadav, you say that, India alliance is not coming together, all allies are betraying them one after another, Nitish Kumar, others, so on and so forth. But looks like all is not well in your house as well, sir. JJP, which was a big ally of yours in Haryana for the last 4 years, now you're no longer allies with them.
No, I think first of all what has to be understood in the context of Haryana is that we formed the government twice in the state of Haryana. The first time we were there independently, we did not require any support. For the second time we fell short of a few seats, and that is when we required the support. But despite, even if JJP gives the support or not gives the support, we had the support of the independent candidates, also of the HLP, and we had the enough number, we had the mandate to go ahead. But we, Bharatiya Janata Party, went ahead in a coalition government, shared the government with the Jan Nayak Janata Party, and were successfully running the government for 4.5 years. Our motto was to serve the people of Haryana, to solve the
so what happened
issues of
after
Haryana,
4.5 years?
to give an
what
alternate.
Happened? Kuch to hua hoga.
After, no, absolutely. And after 4.5 years, when we have come down to this and elections are approaching, I think the ones who have left, should we ask this question, why they have left? We were there, we made them join us, we worked with them for 4.5 years.
What do you mean the ones who have left? Dushyant did not leave your coalition. The chief minister went and resigned. That's how the government ceases to exist. Dushyant Chautala has not sent a letter saying he's walking out of NDA or walking out of the Haryana government.
No, he has, absolutely, and that is why after that the entire government, all resignations from the cabinet had to be done and a new government had to be formed.
You are saying that Dushyant Chautala has conveyed to the BJP leadership that he is not interested in this alliance. Hemant Attri is vehemently shaking his head. Hemant Attri.
Jaka bhai, once all this was
no, he has conveyed.
Jaka bhai, once this was being planned in a particular way, Dushyant Chautala was sitting with JP Nadda in Delhi. Can you imagine? At that point in time, once Haryana government was planning, Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar and his colleagues, cabinet colleagues, they were planning to resign en masse, and the preparations for the new swearing in were there from yesterday night in the Raj Bhavan.
No, but what happened, Hemant bhai? What happened that for 4.5 years you've been in a coalition? Kuch to hua hoga that dramatically Khattar Saab goes and resigns, and then somebody else is appointed as chief minister.
Zaka bhai, it is simple, as simple as that. See, BJP and JJP, but they were post-poll alliance.
Yes.
They were not for parliament alliance, right?
Yes.
After the parliament was the BJP scored 10 out of 10. Then there was an assembly election in October 2019.
Correct.
BJP fell short of some seats. That's how they were forming their government with the help of independents, as the BJP colleague rightly said. But what happened was, Mr. Dushyant Chautala, without being requested through Mr. Anurag Thakur, he went to Amit Shah and offered his unconditional support to him. BJP took that support. In lieu of that, there were huge ministries, almost 8 of them were given to the JJP and a few other ministries, one more ministry. Now what happened was, once this parliament election came, once it is approaching now, BJP was, already having 10 seats. JJP started asking for 2 seats. One is Hisar, from where Dushyant Chautala used to be an MP at one point in time, in 2014.
Yeah.
And Bhiwani Mahendragarh seat, where is Ajay Chautala used to be an MP during Chautala Saab's chief ministership. Now, you tell me one thing. Once you are having 10 seats of your own, on your own, why will you offer 2 seats to me? That's very simple question. I am a post-poll ally. Why would you offer? That is point number 1. Number 2, JJP has a support base of Jats. BJP's complete politics is all about non-Jats. Once they were on good terms, the alliance kept on going. The moment JJP started asking for 2 seats, that was the difference basically.
Okay, so you're saying this whole alliance has come undone because of 2 seats. Okay, let me ask Mohan Kumar Mangalam. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, this is politics. Rajniti mein to ye sab hota rehta hai. Some allies want more seats. If they don't get it, they leave. It's happened to you also. Mamata Banerjee has fielded all 42 candidates in Bengal. The left in Kerala has already announced candidates for all the seats. So ye to hota rehta hai. What is the big deal? At the end of the day, the government is still with the BJP in Haryana.
Zaka, I think they've changed the chief minister merely to try and stave off the massive level of anti-incumbency that this government in Haryana is facing. The outgoing chief minister, the ex-chief minister now, Mr. Khattar, used to say that the identity of Haryana is associated with Jawan, Kisan and Pahalwan. And all 3 sections have been, done massive injustice against by this government. We saw what happened with the female wrestlers. We've seen what's happened with the Agniveers. And we've seen how farmers have protested and how they've been treated by this government. So this changing of the chief minister 6 months before the assembly elections is merely just an attempt to try and reinstate their image, try and reach out to the public again, which should be to no avail whatsoever.
No, but Mohan, I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but this formula, this model has worked for the BJP in the past. In Gujarat, they changed the chief minister before the last election, they won. In Uttarakhand, they changed the chief minister before the last election, they won. So this seems to be a formula that's working for the BJP. Why do you think it's not working?
I think in Uttarakhand and Gujarat, they didn't change it once, they changed it multiple times. And just because it's worked in those particular states doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work here, and that the social coalition that they used last time is still intact and is going to continue to vote for them. I'm just saying, look at precedent, what's happened in the last 4.5 years in Haryana with the main constituents who said to be representing Haryana, how they've been treated by this government. We have to look beyond social coalitions, because these large, sections of society have definitely been treated in a manner that nobody would want to be treated like by this government.
Okay.
So they're changing the government's face and saying that, okay, we're going to work differently, we're going to treat you differently, but it's not going to work. I wanted to say also, as far as the JJP is concerned, they can choose to go with whoever they want. I don't think, even if this is a ploy to sort of split the vote 3 ways, it will work in the coming assembly elections. If they believe that their coalition will be intact and the JJP will split away Jat votes, and so because of a 3-way fight, they'll come out ahead, I don't think that will work either, because there are overarching issues here that go beyond that.
You're well within your right to invite the JJP to be part of the India alliance. Nobody is stopping you from doing that. But be that as it may, I want to ask Professor Sanjay Kumar, the whole politics of Jat versus non-Jat, which effectively in the last 10 years in Haryana, it's really taken on a new dimension. By changing one non-Jat chief minister and replacing him with another non-Jat chief minister, and thereby this coalition with the JJP coming to an end, and all of those things that Mr. Mohan Kumar Mangalam just said, the wrestlers or the farmers, all of these other problems which are associated with the Jat community, do you think the BJP has negated that by changing the chief minister, or those problems continue to remain? Because I keep going back to the Gujarat example, the Uttarakhand example, where the anti-incumbency was against the local leader, in this case the chief minister. When they changed the chief minister, they managed to buck the anti-incumbency. Or does that not apply in Haryana?
No, Zaka, the three problems which you mentioned, I don't think by changing the chief minister, BJP has been able to resolve the three issues of, the Pahalwan, the Kisan and the Jawans. People still seems to be a little unhappy with how the state government has functioned, but I think the more than the state government, people were unhappy with the sitting chief minister. So I think BJP is trying to, present a different image to the people of Haryana that, the government is there, but they are trying to rectify some of the misdeeds which the previous government may have indulged in. They are not saying that there has been some misdeeds by the previous government, but trying to send out a message that there is a new chief minister, there is a new cabinet minister. They are not aiming to mobilize the Jat. I think if you look at the politics of BJP's mobilization, not only in Haryana, if you look at how they have been able to penetrate among the non-dominant OBC caste in Bihar, if you look at non-Yadav OBC, they have been able to make huge inroads. UP, they have been able to make huge inroads among the non-Yadav, the OBC. So in Haryana also the politics is very clear. Leave aside the Jats, don't try and make inroads among the Jat, which is going to be much tougher for them compared to trying to mobilize the non-Jat OBC caste. And they are again sending out a message by putting up a chief minister from Saini caste that look, this is the party which cares for the non-dominant OBC caste. But by doing this, I don't think they are able to convey very clearly that the government, that the three issues has been resolved, or government is very, very sincere in resolving these three issues.
I just want to go back to the magic wall and explain to our viewers, the reason why we are talking so much about the Jat versus non-Jat fault line as far as Haryana is concerned, because the politics of Haryana up until 2014 was dominated by the Jat community. So if you go back to the 2019 Vidhan Sabha election and look at the Jat dominated seats, there you will see that of the 30 seats, 30 out of 90, so about 1/3 of the seats are Jat dominated. It's the Congress that had the maximum number of seats. This is in the Rohtak, Panipat, Sonipat, that belt in the eastern part of the state. And then the JJP had 6 out of the 10 seats that the JJP won. 6 seats were in Jat dominated seats, including in the belts of Sirsa, Jind, etc. The BJP had 9 seats, but not so much in this belt. They had it in the southern part of the state, in the Mahendragarh belt, and of course here 1 seat in the Gurgaon, Faridabad, that belt. But really, the reason why this is important is, and more so in a Vidhan Sabha election, is because 1/3 of the seats are dominated by the Jats. Having said that, even in 2019, despite the Congress getting and the JJP getting a higher share in the Jat dominated seats, overall it is the BJP that ended up as being the #1 party, albeit short of majority, but #1 party nonetheless, because it was able to pick off the seats that are non-Jat dominated, not so much in the central part, but in the southern part, in the western part, and of course in the northern part of the state. And that's how the BJP managed to turn the whole fault line in its advantage, because the consolidation of non-Jats happened against the Jats. But Siddharth Yadav, all of this may be applicable to a Vidhan Sabha. Right now you have a Lok Sabha election within a few weeks. Dates are going to get announced perhaps by the end of this week, maybe early next week. At this juncture, to change a sitting chief minister, in fact, if you go back to the Uttarakhand and Gujarat examples, the sitting chief minister was changed almost a year before the elections, not 2 weeks before a Lok Sabha. So my question is, what signal does this send out to your voter, to your cadres, and also to the opposition that look, कुछ तो गड़बड़ है, इसीलिए तो मुख्यमंत्री को बदला आपने?
Zaka, first of all, I would beg to differ from the fault lines that you were highlighting about Jat, non-Jats. For the Bharatiya Janata Party, we take the Chhattis Biradari of Haryana all together. Our agendas are different. We're working for pro-development, pro-progress. And we are working for every region of Haryana, for every community of Haryana, each and every person of Haryana. When it comes down to saying that we put our weights on the non-Jats, I don't think that is the case, because just before Naib Singh Sainiji's state presidentship, we had the last president from the Jat community, the last president from that also from the Jat community. We have just sent our leader to Rajya Sabha last month. He belongs to the Jat community. That is not the case for us. The Congress party or any regional party in Haryana can probably be focusing on that, or a particular region or a particular community, but the agendas are different for Bharatiya Janata Party. Point number one. Point number two, when you say that if the change has happened, it has to imply that there was something wrong, I don't think that is the case. Because for a cadre-based party like ours, change is constant. Changes do happen. Changes have happened in different states at different times. Changes happen according to our strategy. We ran a very successful government for 9.5 years. We are the baton is now being passed to a more younger face, to a younger leadership. A new series of changes, pro-development, pro-progress is going to happen in the state of Haryana, and there's nothing more to it apart from this. The people of Haryana have realized, they already know that this government has been working for them, and they also know that this change is more for the benefit of the people of Haryana.
Again, the point that the BJP spokesperson is also making is that while the Congress and JJP and other parties, in fact, Rahul Gandhi's entire Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra has been around caste census, but the BJP has come around and completely upended traditional caste dynamics and caste politics as you know it.
Zaka, I mean, I'm not even sure what you mean when you say that, because you just spent the entire show talking about how they are dividing people along caste lines and trying to benefit electorally from the same. Let me just say that there's another angle here where, you know, the reason they took in the JJP, and you see how the BJP spokesperson vehemently denied that they're ignoring Jats, is that because they wanted to have a representative from the Jat community, and now that they're probably getting rid of Dushyant Chautala, they've got his grand uncle Ranjit Chautala to take oath again, and will probably replace him as Deputy Chief Minister. There's another trend here that's kind of interesting, which is the Bharatiya Janata Party seems to revel in dividing Chacha and Bhatija. Whether it is Maharashtra, Mr. Ajit Pawar and Sharad Pawar, whether it is Uttar Pradesh, Akhilesh and his uncle, whether it is Bihar with Chirag Paswan and his uncle, you know, they've moved beyond dividing society along religious lines to now dividing Chacha and Bhatija in the same family.
Okay. Hemant Atri, is that the case? That at the end of the day, we are reading too much into this whole Jat versus non-Jat. They're simply trading one Chautala for another.
No, Zaka, it's not like that. See, Haryana is certainly for sure, it's a caste-based society, there is no doubt about it, and the whole politics revolves around it. Now, there are two small corrections. Once you said there are Jats are only 15% in Haryana. I'm sorry, they are 23.5%. That's a small correction. Number two, the chart that you were showing, that has something very interesting to be told in this context. You showed Haryana, particularly Rohtak area, Rohtak, Panipat, Sonipat and this area. This is basically Congress bastion. That is right. But do you know one thing? Manohar Lal Khattar, serving 9.5 years Chief Minister, is basically from Rohtak district. He is not from Karnal. While being Chief Minister for full 5 years, his whole native belt was swept by Congress. Don't please forget it. Now, there is one small addition also. Mr. Naib Saini, who has been made Chief Minister, he is a one-time MLA, one-time MP. He rose from a clerk and steno with Mr. Narendra Modi once he was General Secretary in charge Haryana in 96-97. Do you know one thing? His wife, the sitting Chief Minister who is here today, Naib Singh Saini, his own wife lost a Jila Parishad election in her home ward number 4 in Narayangarh and lost her security deposit, and she was at number 4. See, the BJP never bets in Haryana on mass leaders. They simply play on caste lines, and that much for them. There is no doubt about it. My BJP friend was saying there is something very interesting, and let me just explain it and put it in perspective. He said our previous president, Mr. Om Prakash Dhankad, was from BJP, from Jat community. Fully agreed. But do you know one thing? Just before the Lok Sabha election, why he was replaced? Because BJP can't afford going to Lok Sabha election with a Jat president. And to compensate that, he put in Mr. ex-president Subhash Barana in Rajya Sabha. So a Jat president removed, a Saini brought in, the same Naib Saini, and to replace Dhankad from the BJP president, Subhash Barana was sent to Rajya Sabha. They are basically trying to balance the whole thing. Let me just give you 30 seconds.
I've got to give the final word to Professor Sanjay Kumar because I'm completely out of time. Professor Sanjay Kumar, maybe not for the Lok Sabha, because obviously in the Lok Sabha, the Modi factor is a plus factor. If you look at the vote share itself, it gives you a clear picture. The BJP's vote share in Haryana when Modi's on the ticket is well above 50%. It's closer to 60%. Whereas when it is for the Vidhan Sabha election, it is under 50%, it's closer to the 40% mark. So maybe not for the Lok Sabha, but certainly for the Vidhan Sabha, this change of chief minister with 6 months to go for the Vidhan Sabha election, will that not have an impact? Does that not send a signal to the voter that, look, we don't have confidence in going with this same face 6 months down the line for the Vidhan Sabha election? That's why we're changing him.
Zaka, a very large number of Indian voters vote for the party. If I want to cite the number in the Lok Sabha election, this is in the range of 60 to 65%. If we look at the Vidhan Sabha election, it is still in the range of 55 to 60%. So what happens is that the voters who are loyal supporters of the party, as I said, a very large number of them vote only for the party. So it doesn't matter very much at this moment, at least during the last 5-7 years we have seen, it doesn't matter very much whether the ruling party or the party which they want to vote have changed the chief minister, whether they have changed a minister, they have removed the minister, brought in someone else. And remember, when they want to do that, they try to look at all the permutation and combination so that the positive signal is sent out to the people. So I don't think this is going to affect adversely the BJP. That look, BJP has accepted that the government was not functioning well, and that is why that is the reason they wanted to, or they were forced to change the chief minister, they were forced to change the government.
All right, we'll see how this story plays out for the BJP in Haryana. But thank you very much in the meanwhile to all our guests for joining us. We're going to take a break, but up next, the top international story and a deep dive in China's power play after India's successful Agni 5 test, where China has now taken offense to Arunachal Pradesh and the fact that the Prime Minister went there and inaugurated the Sela Tunnel, which is the highest tunnel in India in the entire subcontinent. Also, we look at the espionage war that's being waged by the Putin regime against the West amidst the Russia-Ukraine war. All that and more after a quick break. Also, as we take the break, and this is a big announcement, tune in tomorrow from 6 p.m. onwards for our mega News 18 opinion poll right ahead of the Lok Sabha elections from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Wednesday and Thursday right here on CNN News 18.
Presented by
those who are benefiting from the new CAA rules say that we will definitely pray that this day comes in the lives of our other brethren as well. But of course, Indian government will have to take a call. For now, people who came before 2014 December can avail of Indian citizenship under the new Citizenship Amendment Act rules. Citizenship Amendment Act rules have finally been framed and notified. This means that people from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who came to India before December 2014 and who want to now be called Indian citizens, they now know how to go about the process. There is a portal that is being notified by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which means the entire job application process will happen online. On this application form, they will have to swear allegiance to Indian Constitution, to India and its people. There are other formats also available. So with the application, they will have to specify where they came from, the country of origin, the religion that they follow. As far as documentation is required, the Schedule IA that has been mentioned, Schedule 1A, which has been mentioned as part of the Gazette notification, says that 2 sets of documents are required. One, to prove your nationality, and second, to prove that you came to India before the cutoff date of December 2014. So what can these documents be? As far as the documentation to prove your nationality is concerned, passport from your original country, some kind of a birth certificate from your original country, or any government document from your country of origin, which is Bangladesh, Afghanistan or Pakistan, is acceptable. Now one might ask that if these are persecuted minorities, if they have fled from their country, how is it that they will have these documents? So one has to understand that this is a situation where we are talking of people who have been in India for the last 10 years, at least, because 2014, like I said, is the cutoff date. When they came to India, most of them came on long-term visa. For example, I spoke to some people who are in Rajasthan, who fled from Pakistan, but they came to India on the pilgrimage visa. Similar instances are found in Majnu Ka Tila area of Delhi as well. So these are people who took a 7-day visa or a 15-day visa saying that we want to do Kumbh Mela or we want to visit places of pilgrimage. So when they came and they got that visa, they had their passport and they had their visa stamped as well. There is no renewal for passport that these people required, because within 1 month of coming to India, as per existing norms, they had to go to the local FRRO, the Foreigners Registration Office, and say that I don't want to go back to my country because I fear persecution. Now, under the new rules, even that FRRO slip whereby you have communicated and FRRO has acknowledged your communication, even that is being accepted by Government of India. And because based on that FRRO slip, you were given a long-term visa. So the process of documentation is already there. Some people, because they've been in India for so long, have gotten their children admitted into schools. In the school admission form, their country of origin is mentioned as Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan. They've got their Aadhaar cards based on their long-term visa. Those Aadhaar cards have been linked to bank account, bank documents. All of these are acceptable documents now. So for this group which came to India before 2014, life will be much simpler, it will be much easier. But they hope and they feel that there are many in these colonies, refugee camps of Jaisalmer, refugee camps of Majnu Ka Tila. The exodus from these countries continue. From these three countries, people have come in 2016, 20, 22, and people I spoke to, those who are benefiting from the new CAA rules, say that we will definitely pray that this day comes in the lives of our other brethren as well. But of course, Indian government will have to take a call. For now, people who came before 2014 December can avail of Indian citizenship under the new Citizenship Amendment Act rules. Citizenship Amendment Act rules have finally been framed and notified. This means that people from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who came to India before December 2014 and who want to now be called Indian citizens, they now know how to go about the process. There is a portal that is being notified by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which means the entire job application process will happen online. On this application form, they will have to swear allegiance to Indian Constitution, to India and its people. There are other formats also available. So with the application, they will have to specify where they came from, the country of origin, the religion that they follow. As far as documentation is required, the Schedule IA that has been mentioned, Schedule 1A, which has been mentioned as part of the Gazette notification, says that two sets of documents are required. One, to prove your nationality, and second, to prove that you came to India before the cutoff date of December 2014. So what can these documents be? As far as the documentation to prove your nationality is concerned, passport from your original country, some kind of a birth certificate from your original country, or any government document from your country of origin, which is Bangladesh, Afghanistan or Pakistan, is acceptable. Now one might ask that if these are persecuted minorities, if they have fled from their country, how is it that they will have these documents? So one has to understand that this is a situation where we are talking of people who have been in India for the last 10 years, at least, because 2014, like I said, is the cutoff date. When they came to India, most of them came on long-term visa. For example, I spoke to some people who are in Rajasthan, who fled from Pakistan, but they came to India on the pilgrimage visa. Similar instances are found in Majnu Ka Tila area of Delhi as well. So these are people who took a 7-day visa or a 15-day visa saying that we want to do Kumbh Mela or we want to visit places of pilgrimage. So when they came and they got that visa, they had their passport and they had their visa stamped as well. There is no renewal for passport that these people required, because within 1 month of coming to India, as per existing norms, they had to go to the local FRRO, the Foreigners Registration Office, and say that I don't want to go back to my country because I fear persecution. Now, under the new rules, even that FRRO slip whereby you have communicated and FRRO has acknowledged your communication, even that is being accepted by Government of India. And because based on that FRRO slip, you were given a long-term visa. So the process of documentation is already there. Some people, because they've been in India for so long, have gotten their children admitted into schools. In the school admission form, their country of origin is mentioned as Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan. They've got their Aadhaar cards based on their long-term visa. Those Aadhaar cards have been linked to bank account, bank documents. All of these are acceptable documents now. So for this group which came to India before 2014, life will be much simpler, it will be much easier. But they hope and they feel that there are many in these colonies, refugee camps of Jaisalmer, refugee camps of Majnu Ka Tila. The exodus from these countries continue. From these three countries, people have come in 2016, 20, 22, and people I spoke to, those who are benefiting from the new CAA rules, say that we will definitely pray that this day comes in the lives of our other brethren as well. But of course, Indian government will have to take a call. For now, people who came before 2014 December can avail of Indian citizenship under the new Citizenship Amendment Act rules. Citizenship Amendment Act rules have finally been framed and notified. This means that people from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who came to India before December 2014 and who want to now be called Indian citizens, they now know how to go about the process. There is a portal that is being notified by the Ministry
All right, shifting focus now away from domestic politics to some international and strategic focus. India has maintained the power play in the region by bolstering its military power, the latest one coming on Monday with Mission Divyastra, the first test flight of the indigenously developed Agni 5 missile with multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle technology. Now, the advanced tech ensures that the warhead can split, or multiple warheads can split into multiple re-entry vehicles to deliver a precise and targeted attack at different locations. The Agni 5 is powered by a 3-stage solid fuel engine. It boasts a striking range of over 5,000 kilometers with exceptional accuracy. Equipped with indigenous avionics systems and high-accuracy sensor packages, it's been hailed as a testament to India's growing defense and technological prowess. India now joins a select group of nations which possess the MIRV capability, which includes the P5 countries, United States, Britain, France, Russia and China. But this feat by the Indian Defence Forces, by the DRDO, seems to have rattled China a bit. It has raised the Arunachal bogey yet again after the successful test. China has lodged a diplomatic protest with India over Prime Minister Modi's visit there to Arunachal last week. Remember, he had gone there and inaugurated the Sela Tunnel, which is the world's highest tunnel for the purposes of transport. Now, China says that India's moves will only complicate the unresolved boundary question. India, for its part, has rejected Chinese concerns and said it's been made aware of India's position on several occasions. Prime Minister Modi on Saturday had dedicated the Sela Tunnel, which is built at an altitude of 13,000 feet in Arunachal Pradesh. It will provide all-weather access to Tawang, which of course has been the site of a dispute between India and China.
ये डिफेंस सेक्टर में आत्मनिर्भर भारत की एक और बड़ी उड़ान है। विकसित भारत की कल्पना आत्मनिर्भर भारत के बिना संभव ही नहीं है।
All right, let me go across to two guests who are joining us on this face-off. Professor Victor Gao is Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, and Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain is former GOC&C of the 15 Corps. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for speaking with us. Let me start with Professor Gao first. Why does China seem so rattled? After all, this is an indigenous development by Indian scientists of the Defense Research and Development Organization, a 5,000-kilometer range Agni 5 missile, which has multiple intended re-entry vehicle capability. Why is China getting so rattled by that? Nowhere has India said that this technology is aimed at China.
Thank you very much for having me. I disagree with your question. I think China has made progress to the Indian government for two things. One is the deployment of about 10,000 Indian troops to the disputed areas between China and India. Secondly, China protested against Prime Minister Modi to the disputed area in the eastern section of China-Indian border, which is called South Tibet by China and called as Arunachal Pradesh by India. Now, there is no dispute that the border dispute does exist, and China and India need to handle their border dispute carefully rather than provoking each other. And China believed the deployment of 10,000 troops and Prime Minister Modi's visit to Arunachal Pradesh, as India calls it, and as South Tibet, as China calls it, is highly provocative. That's the reason of the Chinese protest.
No, but the fact that this missile was tested yesterday, Prime Minister Modi went to Arunachal Pradesh on Saturday, and on the day that this missile is tested and India announces to the world that the missile has been tested, that's when China decides to make a noise about the Arunachal Pradesh visit, not on the day that it happened.
I don't think so. I think as a sovereign country, India has full right to develop its own defense weapons of all kinds. And China has no problem with that. China and India need to follow a pathway of peace with each other rather than militarization against each other or provoking each other. That's why China takes it very, as a matter of fact, the announcement of the Indian military achievements. To a certain degree, I think any significant Indian achievement is welcomed by China.
Let me ask General Hasnain, there are only 5 other countries, the P5 countries essentially, which have this MIRV technology. India now becomes the 6th. And clearly, if you have an intercontinental ballistic missile at 5,000 kilometer range and with this MIRV technology, which can carry multiple nuclear warheads, isn't the message to China, even if it is unsaid?
See, first of all, Zaka, I have a great respect for Professor Gao. He's an intellectual of great repute. And therefore, but I have to counter in his perception here. This whole aspect of missile warfare, China has developed this capability for many years, last 20, 30 years. They have an entire arm called the Second Artillery, which is dedicated essentially to missilery. India doesn't have anything of that kind. We've got very limited missilery so far. What we are attempting to essentially do is to catch up with the rest of the world. In fact, it's a very good thing that among the bigger powers, we have also now got the capability. And this is not necessarily targeted at China. We've demonstrated our capability. Nations develop and test such equipment, such weaponry, essentially to also ascertain their own technological capability and what threshold have they been able to reach up to. If China perceives a test by India as a threat to itself, then that's China's perception. It's not necessarily India's concern about that. We should be perceiving similarly every time that China talks about missilery, the kind of things that they do over Taiwan and places like that are equally threats to us. So, but we have not been protesting about that.
But General, I think if I may,
it's a fair one.
This technology of MIRV, which is a missile that's with a range of 5,000 kilometers, capable of hitting Beijing, as they say, but more importantly, can carry up to 3 to 5 nuclear warheads. Isn't that more for deterrence reasons, and particularly more so because India has a no first use policy, rather than for actual deployment? It's not like this rocket is going to be deployed tomorrow at the LAC.
Absolutely, Zaka, absolutely. And we are not going to war with China, and China also knows it's not going to war with us. These are things which nations do for their protection. These are all absolutely correct. These are acts of deterrence which you do from time to time. And China is not the only one with whom we have to develop that capability. We have others around us. We live in a neighborhood which is a disturbed neighborhood. So I think China should not feel really disturbed about this, because it has developed its own capabilities over a period of time, and we have never protested about it.
Okay. No, the problem, Professor Gao, is it's not just, forget about India, China. China's behavior towards India, particularly in the last 3-4 years, that's a matter of a completely different debate altogether. India looks around the region, and Chinese behavior around the region, whether it is with Japan or with South Korea or with Vietnam or with Philippines and of course with Taiwan. What is the signal that India is supposed to derive? That here is a country which has superpower ambitions, which is trying to change the status quo and sometimes even militarily push the envelope if it came down to that. So the signal and the only meaning that India can decipher out of this is that India has to fortify its defenses, because today it is Taiwan and Philippines, tomorrow it could be India. So India is just fortifying its defenses with the test of the Agni 5.
Allow me to emphasize one thing. China is a superpower in the world. China is one of the 5 permanent member states in the Security Council of the United Nations. China is on the par with the United States militarily. And China is a larger economy than the US economy if we use purchasing power parity. And China is next only to the United States if we use official exchange rate. China today, in terms of its size of the economy, is more than 5 times that of India. This is the reality. However, please bear in mind, China has achieved all this transformation through peace, not occupying any single inch of foreign land, not occupying any foreign country. You talked about Taiwan. Read Indian government's position. Indian government recognizes and acknowledges there is only one China. Taiwan is part of China. That's the reality. Don't get that wrong. Look at China-Japan relations. Japan unconditionally surrendered to China and the United States and the former Soviet Union, signing an instrument of unconditional surrender. In that surrender, Japan undertook some commitments. You never want to allow Japan to renege their commitment signed into the instrument of the unconditional surrender. Otherwise, you take the risk of resurrecting the shadows of imperialism in Japan.
No, but
Now,
Professor
you
Gao,
talk
you're
about
missing
China,
the
Vietnam.
point. The point being that there's only one country that seems to have a problem with its neighbors, or at least its neighbors seem to have a problem with it. I never hear of Indonesia complaining about Japanese high-handedness, or about Cambodia or Thailand complaining about South Korean high-handedness. Everybody is worried about Chinese hegemony. So then, who is the problem with?
I disagree. Allow me to tell you one simple truth. China has 14 land neighboring countries. China signed a border treaty with 12 of them, including Vietnam. China has a border treaty agreement with Vietnam. Only 2 countries have not signed border treaty with China. India, your great India, and Bhutan, which is controlled by India in terms of diplomacy and military.
Okay.
China has signed a border treaty with, among all the others, Russia. Do you hear any problem between China and Russia, which share border of 4,300 kilometers
that's only
long?
in the recent past.
Oh.
Historically, the Soviet Union and China never saw eye to eye. But be that as it may, that's not the point of tonight's debate. But General Hasnain, I want to come back to the point. This development of the stage of the Agni 5 is happening in the context of, and let's not diminish the context, because the context is absolutely important, the changed situation that we are seeing, and certainly the changed dynamic and the changed relations between Beijing and Delhi over the last 4 years since the 2020 Galwan incident happened. Let's face the reality. Today, as the External Affairs Minister said, ties between India and China are not normal, and there's a singular reason for why it's not normal. That's because the situation on the LAC as it existed for the last 30 years, the treaties and the situation on the ground, that has been completely upended by Chinese action. The ball really is in our court on either you raise the cost for China not to try and dare to change that situation change the status quo over the last 30 years, or we accept a new reality.
See, Zaka, why only talk of the context of India and China here? Let's talk of the context of China and much of the world. What's happening in the Philippines? What's happening in the South China Sea? What's happening with Vietnam and with Indonesia? With many other countries. I mean, China, Professor Gao can keep boasting of China being a superpower and at peace with everyone and having signed accords all over. Yes, but at the end of it, the reality is everyone still feels threatened by China. Exactly. The whole world feels threatened by China at the moment. Coming to the actual context of India and China, see 2020. A very peaceful relationship being developed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at that time. Over the last 5-6 years, the kind of exchanges that we had between the Chinese president and the Indian Prime Minister, we all thought we were on pig's back as far as the relationship was concerned. And then one fine day, because you feel threatened, because China feels threatened, China feels that India is getting too confident, China feels that India has got a leader at last who can make things happen, they feel threatened altogether. What do? You create a problem in a non-existing problem area in Ladakh and decide to trigger off something which will probably never stop for many years. And so we have to, whoever we are in context with, we have to take care of our defense.
Yes.
And obviously, this is all a part of those measures which are being taken. Not only that, it's a demonstration of our overall capability, which we will match over the next few years.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Let's see how the story plays out between India and China. But I think the message is very, very clear that India is no longer just a pushover. It is militarily a power that has to be reckoned with. And it's a power that's not going to accept unilateral change of status quo. And as far as the Agni 5 is concerned, it's absolutely an unambiguous signal, particularly in the context of the no first use, that this is an ultimate deterrent weapon more than one meant for actual deployment. So we'll see how this is received in Beijing. But I want to thank both our guests. As we wrap up, I want to bring you up to speed with what's been going on in the Russia-Ukraine war and the context in which the war is going ahead over the next few weeks and months, particularly the political context, the economic context, the military context, and of course, the spiritual context under which Vladimir Putin seems to be engaged in this war of attrition, really, against Ukraine. Russia has aggressively relaunched its spy wars with the West. Proof of it was in Moscow's recent publication of a phone call in which two senior German Air Force officers are discussing sending cruise missiles into Ukraine. In recent weeks, almost every week, it seems another covert operation comes to light. It shows how far Russia's intelligence agencies have penetrated Europe since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago. On the 27th of February, Tihomir Ivanchev, he became the 6th Bulgarian national to be charged with being part of a suspected Russian spy ring. This got busted in the UK. 2 weeks before that, Maxim Kuzimov, a Russian military pilot who defected to Ukraine last year, was found dead in Spain. His body was riddled with bullets, including a shot through his heart. France has also claimed to uncover a network of over 100 Russian-origin websites that are designed to spread misinformation ahead of the European elections that are due later this year. The European Parliament has also opened a probe into whether a Latvian MEP might be an agent for the Russian Secret Service. However, it was last weekend's leaked phone conversations between these senior German Air Force officers that was Moscow's most explosive propaganda coup so far this year. The Luftwaffe officers are discussing in that phone call how Kiev could use German-supplied missiles to destroy the Kerch Bridge. Our viewers will remember that the Kerch Bridge links mainland Russia to Russian-occupied Crimea. German officials said that this leak and the subsequent accusations from Moscow that Germany was devising cunning plans to attack Russia were a blatant attempt by President Vladimir Putin to divide Ukraine's allies. The apparent step-up in Kremlin's counterintelligence operations marks a new confidence amongst Russia's spy masters. But that was not the case when this war began 2 years ago. First, Western agencies stole and publicized Moscow's plans for Ukraine's invasion. Once Russian tanks started rolling towards Kiev, then European capitals ejected as many as 600 diplomats, 400 of whom were believed to be Russian spies. Several Russian illegals who are operating without diplomatic cover were also uncovered. When Russia's ground invasion stalled, Putin placed the top FSB leadership under house arrest for grossly misjudging Ukraine's resistance. But since then, Russia's main intelligence services, the GRU military intelligence, the FSB Federal Security Service, and the SVR Foreign Intelligence Agency have all regrouped and revamped their spy craft to improve chances of Russia's conventional military operations. But the priorities remain the same: to steal Western secrets, to widen divisions within NATO, and to undermine support for Ukraine. But the methods have become far more ingenious to compensate for the disrupted espionage networks in Europe. One of the Kremlin's biggest changes seems to be the use of proxy intelligence actors. Now, before the war, Western agencies were mostly dealing with Russian operations that were carried out by Russian nationals across Europe. Today, that may no longer be the case. Russian covert operations are now using a range of foreign nationals who are drawn from politics, business, even organized crime. Like, for example, the Serbian gang that organized last year's escape of Artem Us, who is a Kremlin-linked businessman who was arrested in Italy under suspicions of selling American military technology to Moscow. The Kremlin also applied pressure on Russian exiles to try and co-opt them and other opponents of the Putin regime who had fled abroad after the war started. For Russia's spy masters, conducting operations at a distance by using remote working and freshly recruited proxies has both its advantages and disadvantages. On the one hand, there is greater scope for deniability. Proxies can also be effective for operations like stealing trade secrets, setting up sanctions-evading export schemes, or even penetrating some computer networks. A USB stick that's plugged into a computer by an office cleaner could deliver just as much intelligence, just as valuable intelligence as that you would get from a human source that's been cultivated for many years. But operational security can also be a risk. Proxies can be hard to control without an on-ground agent to try and control them. To address that, Russia's GRU, Military Intelligence Unit, has begun recruiting who they call clean skins. These are basically agents who have no military background, and therefore it becomes much harder for them to be detected. Therefore, they can cross into target countries and establish personal contacts without being relatively noticed. This was revealed according to a recent report by the Royal United Services Institute think tank in London. And to some extent, the old model of legal Russian spies working out of embassies, it still continues to hold in traditionally neutral countries like Austria or Switzerland. Security officials from both of these countries said that there were about 150 known Russian agents who are still operating there under diplomatic cover. Another intelligence official from a different country estimated that nearly a third of Russia's intelligence operations across Europe now run from Vienna and Geneva. In addition, Russia's spy masters have also strengthened their bases outside the Schengen zone, which is the EU passport-free zone. Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, for example, both in the Middle East, have become important staging posts for Russia's intelligence operations meant for Europe. Several expelled Russian agents have also reportedly relocated to Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia. Belgrade maintains good ties with Moscow. Russia's new approach was described by Norway's Domestic Intelligence Service in its recent annual report, and I quote from it: "We expect that Russia will try to compensate for the loss of intelligence officers, among other things, by sending more visiting agents." So in other words, Russia could use more illegals. For example, Jose Assis Guiamaria, who is supposedly a Brazilian academic who took up a post at a Norwegian university in 2021. But he was exposed as an alleged Russian undercover officer. The very next year, he's now awaiting trial. It is all but impossible to know how effective Russia's revamped spycraft methods will prove to be. In the intelligence world, you always know less than what you actually know. The West and its spy masters were hopeful of countering Russian espionage. Will Burns, who's the director of the CIA, wrote recently that Putin's growing authoritarianism has created an undercurrent of disaffection in Russia's security agencies. He also views this as a once-in-a-generation recruiting opportunity. Similar thoughts have been echoed by Sir Richard Moore, the head of the MI6, who has said, and again I quote, "There are many Russians today who are silently appalled. Our door is always open." But at the same time, the expulsions of Russian diplomats may have made counterintelligence much harder. Western agencies previously knew which diplomats were spies, and they could track who they met and even potentially recruit them. Either way, the operational effectiveness of these so-called co-opted illegals or clean skins is often less than imagined. They do not have the kind of capabilities that regular agents do. Sleepers work alone, they don't have much access to secret information, and clearly they don't have any official support. Since the Ukraine invasion, Western agencies have also stepped up cooperation, building a network of databases and connections to catch Russian operatives. There is much more international collaboration. It's become a priority of sorts now. with counterterrorism, the new mantra seems to be dare to share. Even so, Russia's intelligence machine will sometimes succeed spectacularly, like they did in 2020 with the SolarWinds cyber attack that hacked the Pentagon, or with the German air officer's leak case that happened recently. The days of the Cold War spy sagas are far from over.
The entire job application process will happen online. On this application form, they will have to swear allegiance to Indian Constitution, to India and its people. There are other formats also available. So with